Welcome to episode 1 of the world proven famous conspiracies in the history of the world. He wasn't mummified with honor. He was wrapped in a sheepskin, a sign of damnation, and buried alive. Why? Because he was Prince Pentower, the son who tried to murder his own father for the throne. Today, we open the Judicial Papyrus of Turin to read the actual trial records of the Harem Conspiracy, identifying the women, the sorcerers, and the traitor prince who was forced to take his own life. While history remembers the screaming mummy, Prince Pentower, the Judicial Papyrus of Turin, the court record, identifies Pebekamen as the chief enemy. He was the operational genius who united the harem ladies, the army commanders, and the dark sorcerers. He was the highest, ranking official in charge of the pharaoh's private quarters and the royal harem. He reached this level by proving his loyalty over decades. He managed the king's schedule, his food, his clothes, and his secrets. He was the invisible man standing next to Ramesses III for years. In ancient Egypt, the chief of the chamber was a position of absolute trust. He was the only man allowed to freely enter the harem, the women's palace, which was forbidden to all other males. As Ramesses III grew old and the empire began to crumble under strikes and famine, Pebekamen saw an opening. He realized that whoever controlled the harem controlled the king's safety. He stopped serving the king and started serving Queen T, a secondary wife, who wanted her son, Pentower, to seize the throne. I am Czar, educating the common man about famous conspiracies of our history. If you like my content, kindly like, subscribe, and comment. He used the women of the harem to seduce the royal guards and pass messages to the army commanders outside. The victim was Ramesses III Usurper Mayaman approx. 65 years old, god, king of Egypt, the last great warrior pharaoh of the new kingdom. For 3,000 years, history books said he survived the attack or died of shock. In 2012, a CT scan revealed the horrifying reality. His throat was slit so deeply that the knife severed his trachea, esophagus, and major blood vessels, hitting the spine. He died within minutes. The conspiracy was driven by 3 key figures with distinct roles. One of the secondary wives of Ramesses III, her motive was she knew her son, Pentower, would not inherit the throne. The king had chosen a son by another wife, the future Ramesses IV. To secure her son's future, she had to kill the king before he died naturally. She used her influence inside the harem to recruit the women and send messages to officials outside. Mentioned earlier second person was Pebekamen, chief of the chamber. His role was the major domo who controlled access to the king. He was the bridge. He connected the secluded women of the harem to the men who had weapons and magic. He distributed the wax dolls and the orders. Third person was Messenger Royal Butler, a high-ranking butler who had direct physical access to the king during his meals and dressing. He likely coordinated the physical attack or signaled when the guards were distracted. Yes, the conspirators were shockingly organized, and their communication methods were their downfall. They used the women of the harem as couriers. According to the Judicial Papyrus of Turin, the message sent from the harem to the outside conspirators was simple and chilling. Stir up the people, incite enmity in order to make rebellion against their lord. This was a written command to start a civil war the moment the king was dead. This is not a rumor, it is the official court transcript of the trial. It lists 28 men executed or forced to commit suicide, 10 men mutilated noses and ears cut off, 4 judges prosecuted for being seduced by the accused women during the trial. The conspiracy wasn't funded with gold in the traditional sense. It was funded with state resources stolen from the palace. Pebekamen didn't just buy these at a market. He recruited the royal treasurer to steal official wax and papyrus from the government stores. They crafted wax figures of the palace guards and the king. These were used in voodoo like rituals to disable the limbs of the targets. The court records explicitly state they used. This proves they believed they needed supernatural help to bypass the king's divine protection. The harem was a weapon-free zone. The knives and the axe used to kill Ramesses III had to be smuggled in by the corrupt guards or the chief of the chamber himself. The fact that they had a heavy axe inside the private quarters proves high-level complicity. The conspirators weren't paid in cash, they were paid in future appointments. The army commanders and judges who joined the plot were promised promotions once Pentower took the throne. The women of the harem were likely promised freedom or higher status as queen mothers. The execution of the Harem Conspiracy was a masterpiece of violence, but a catastrophe of politics. To use a modern analogy, they successfully assassinated the president, but they forgot to secure the nuclear codes. Militarily and tactically, the assassination itself was flawless. They achieved the impossible, killing a god, king inside his own fortress. They bypassed the elite royal guards, perhaps using the wax magic or simple bribery, and entered the private chambers at Medinet Habu without raising an alarm. The forensic evidence proves they attacked Ramesses III with overwhelming speed and numbers. This CT scans reveal two distinct weapon types used simultaneously. One assassin wielded a sharp dagger to slit the throat from the front, while another used a heavy axe or cleaver to chop off his toe, likely from behind or while he was on the ground. They managed to kill him amidst the noise of the beautiful feast of the valley celebration outside. No one heard the king scream. The conspiracy failed because of timing and arrogance. They assumed that once the king was dead, the throne would automatically fall to Prince Pentuer. They were wrong. The heir was waiting. The designated heir, Ramesses IV, was not a passive victim. He was a grown man, an experienced army commander, and he was likely suspicious. The moment the news of his father's death reached him, Ramesses IV didn't panic. He immediately seized control of the palace security, secured the royal seal, and arrested the conspirators before they could announce Pentuer as the new pharaoh. The magic didn't work. The conspirators relied heavily on black magic wax dolls, spells to blind the guards and confuse the heir. While the magic might have given them confidence to attack, it did nothing to stop Ramesses IV soldiers. The invisible spells failed against cold steel. The public didn't rise. The message sent to the conspirators outside, stir up the people, incite enmity, failed. The Egyptian population and the priesthood remained loyal to the legitimate heir. There was no popular revolution to support the usurper. The failure of the political coup is proven by the corpse of Prince Pentuer, unknown man-E. If the conspiracy had succeeded, Pentuer would have been mummified as a king. Instead, he was buried. His brain and organs were left inside to rot, a sign of impurity. In ancient Egypt, sheepskin was considered ritually unclean. Being wrapped in it meant he was damned for eternity. His jaw was tied open, or rigor mortis set in while he was screaming in agony, possibly from being buried alive or poisoned. The most chilling aspect of the Harem Conspiracy is that while Ramesses III was murdered to change the succession, the political system didn't just survive, it hardened. The immediate beneficiary wasn't the conspirator Prince Pentuer who was executed, but the designated heir Ramesses IV and unknowingly the high priests of Amun. The very next day, instead of a new dynasty under Pentuer, Egypt entered a state of martial law under Ramesses IV. The royal harem was a semi-autonomous institution with its own lands, taxes, and officials. It was a state within a state. Ramesses IV immediately gutted the harem's political power. He launched the Great Tribunal, a special court to try the conspirators. This wasn't a normal trial. It was a liquidation of the old guard. He centralized security. The harem officials were no longer trusted. The king's personal security detail was purged and replaced with loyalists, often foreign mercenaries, sherdon, who had no ties to Egyptian court politics. Ramesses IV didn't just step into his father's shoes. He declared a renaissance. He published the Great Harem Papyrus, the longest papyrus in history, which was essentially a massive audit of the entire Egyptian economy. To prove that his father, and by extension, himself had been generous to the gods, effectively buying the loyalty of the priesthood to secure his shaky throne. He got the throne earlier than expected. While he lost his father, he gained absolute authority to crush his rivals. By successfully prosecuting the conspirators and publishing the results, he proved his legitimacy and strength to a population that was terrified of civil war. Other winner in this is the most critical historical shift. To secure his throne after the assassination, Ramesses IV had to rely heavily on the support of the priesthood of Amun in Thebes. The cost of this conspiracy was, in the Great Harem Papyrus, Ramesses IV confirmed massive land grants and tax exemptions for the temples. Now we look at the consequence. This weakened the monarchy permanently. Within a few generations, the high priests of Amun would become so powerful they would essentially rule Upper Egypt as rival kings, ending the new kingdom. The Harem Conspiracy accelerated the transfer of power from the pharaoh to the priests. The military leaders who stayed loyal to Ramesses IV were rewarded with the estates and titles confiscated from the executed conspirators like Pebekamen and Messeger. As mentioned earlier, Ramesses IV didn't just clean house, he burned it down, he executed his brother, mutilated his staff, and cut the noses off his own Supreme Court justices. The message was clear: in the game of pharaohs there are no witnesses, there are only accomplices and corpses. In the Harem Conspiracy, everyone who touched the plot was erased. Ramesses IV didn't just want justice, he wanted a scorched earth policy to ensure no one would ever try this again. Here is the fate of the witnesses, the conspirators, and, most shockingly, the judges who tried them. The Judicial Papyrus of Turin lists the fates of the accused in cold, bureaucratic detail. There were no prison sentences. There were only 3 outcomes. Prince Pentuer and other high-ranking nobles, they were left alone in a room with a knife or poison. The text says, they took their own lives. This allowed them to keep their bodies intact for the afterlife, though Pentuer was denied proper mummification. Pebekamen, the mastermind, the sorcerers, and the lower-ranking officials. They were executed, likely impaled or decapitated, and then their bodies were burned. To an ancient Egyptian, burning the body destroyed the soul, meaning they ceased to exist in both this world and the next. This was the ultimate capital punishment. The lesser conspirators, messengers, guards who looked away, their noses and ears were cut off. They were released back into society as living monsters, walking advertisements of the king's wrath. This is the loose end that proves how deep the rot went. The harem women were so persuasive, and the corruption so endemic, that they managed to compromise the very trial meant to condemn them. During the investigation, 3 of the 12 supreme judges appointed by Ramesses IV were caught partying with the accused women. The royal guards caught the judges having beer and sex parties with the harem conspirators during the trial. The women were trading sexual favors for lighter sentences or acquittal. Ramesses IV was ruthless. He arrested his own judges. 1 judge was forced to commit suicide. 2 judges had their noses and ears cut off and were fired. The most famous witness protection program in history was actually a witness destruction program. The court scribes refused to write the real names of the conspirators in the official records. Murray, beloved of Ra, became messenger. Ra hates him. The mastermind became Pebekamen, the blind servant. By changing their names, the king ensured that even if their spirits reached the hall of judgment, the gods wouldn't recognize them. They were ghosted from eternity. Prince Pentuer, unknown man E, was a traitor who was forced to commit suicide and was erased from history. He was buried in a royal cache, DB 320, alongside the greatest kings of Egypt. However, he was wrapped in a sheepskin ritually impure/damned, and his organs were not removed, denying him the afterlife. If he was a traitor who deserved to be erased, why wasn't his body burned? Burning was the standard punishment for high treason like Pebekamen. Why was he given a royal burial spot, but a damned wrapping? This reveals a split in the court. Someone powerful, perhaps a surviving queen or a sympathizer within the priesthood, intervened to save his body, even if they couldn't save his soul. It proves that Ramesses IV's hold on power was weak. He couldn't even fully dispose of the rival prince. The conspirators used wax dolls and spells to disable the guards. This was the Bronze Age collapse. Empires were falling. The Egyptian army was professional and battle-hardened. Why would seasoned generals and the royal treasurer rely on wax dolls to fight elite soldiers? The magic accusation in the trial was likely propaganda. By blaming sorcery, the state avoided admitting the embarrassing truth. The guards were bribed. It is much better for a pharaoh to say, "I was defeated by dark magic," than "I was defeated because I stopped paying for my security personal properly." The official records say the king gave the order. The autopsy says the king had no throat. The entire legal basis for the execution of the harem conspirators was a lie. Ramesses IV didn't just inherit a throne, he inherited a crime scene, and he forged the evidence to make it look like justice. I hope you will enjoy my contents as we explore the world's most bizarre and hidden conspiracies. Show me some your love by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Your comments are always welcome. See you in next episode of the World of Conspiracies. Thanks for watching.